detailed family history in Welford chart notes. In this video, you will learn about the family history expander, detailed family history, recording relatives, recording diagnoses, recording no family history of, detailed family history at functions, and detailed family history parsing. Part 1. Family History Expander. Welford Chart Notes lets you record blocks of free text called expanders, one of which is the Family History Expander. To view or record a free text description of a patient's family history, press Write Expanders. Choose the name of the patient, select Family History, and press Record. Here you can type in the text of the family history and use contractions to save you time. It'll automatically check your spelling. Press OK to store the information. Part 2. Detailed Family History. But you don't have to use the Family History Expander. Welford Chart Notes also lets you record family history in a structured database called Detailed Family History. This database then allows you to test for a family history of diagnoses in rules and reports. Let's see this in action. To use Detailed Family History, press the Detailed Family History toolbar button or press Write Family History, then choose the name of the patient. Here we see the main Detailed Family History window. Part 3. Recording relatives. To add a relative to the list of relatives for this patient, click the Add button. Enter the first, middle, last name, and ending, if any. You are not required to enter any name at all if all you know is that the patient had a particular relative, such as a sister. The program defaults to filling in the last name of the patient for the last name of the relative. If you have previously recorded the relative's father or mother as another relative of this patient, you can choose that name from the drop-down list. Here you choose the relationship between this relative and the patient. In this example, the relative is the patient's father. If you specify a relationship for which the sex is automatic, such as father is always male, then the sex is automatically filled in for you when you specify the relationship. Here you can enter the date of birth of this relative if known. Check the approximate box if you only know it approximately. If the relative has died, you can enter the date of death here, and again check approximate if it is approximate. If you specify that the patient has died using a death date, then alive and well becomes grayed out, but if you leave it blank, then alive and well is available to be checked if it is something you know about this relative. If you don't know the date that the relative died, but you know the age at which the relative died, you can enter that age here. If you know that the patient is dead, but you don't know the date or age at which the patient died, just check the dead box. You can write an optional comment about this relative here. If the relative also happens to be a patient in your practice, you can use the very powerful search function. Press the search button and specify the name of the patient who happens to be this relative. The diagnoses in this relative's diagnosis editor are automatically imported into the detailed family history, and the two of them are linked together. Any future changes you make to the diagnosis editor of this relative are also automatically reflected in the detailed family history for this relative. In this example, Grover Cleveland is also a patient in this practice, and so now all of the diagnoses in his diagnosis editor, such as traumatic cataract and hypertension, are also listed as diseases in the family history of him as a relative of Joan Cleveland. Part 4. Recording diagnoses. Once you have added one or more relatives, click on the name of a relative and then click on Diagnoses to edit the list of diagnoses for that relative. Click the Add button to add a new diagnosis to this list. Type the diagnosis here. The program shows you diagnoses in the vocabulary system that begin with the letters as you type them in. You may also type in any free text you wish, even if it is not a diagnosis, such as a history of having a particular operation. If you know the age at which this relative began to have this diagnosis, enter it here. If you only know roughly when the relative began to have the diagnosis, you can enter a to age here. For example, if the patient tells you that the relative had the diagnosis in his 30s, you can have an onset age of 30 with a to age of 39. If the diagnosis is the cause of death of this relative, then check this box. The program automatically looks up the SNOMED code for any diagnoses in the vocabulary system. You can also press the SNOMED lookup button to look up the SNOMED code for any diagnosis. Enter an optional comment here about this diagnosis. Press the vocab button if you wish to jump to the vocabulary editor and look up information about a diagnosis. And press OK to store this information. Click the Delete button if you wish to delete the highlighted diagnosis. Click the Edit button or double-click a line to edit its information. Click the Clear button to delete all of the diagnoses on the list. Do this only if you have entered them all in error. Part 5. Recording no family history of. You can also record when a patient tells you that there is no history of a particular diagnosis in the family. To do so, double-click on the No Family History Of box. This brings up the list of diagnoses that you have declared the patient to have no family history of. Click the Add button to add a diagnosis to this list. Type the diagnosis in here. The program automatically shows you all of the diagnoses in the vocabulary system that begin with the letters as you type them. The program automatically looks up the SNOMED code for your diagnosis, or you can type a different one in place of it. Press the SNOMED lookup button if you wish to look up a SNOMED code in the vocabulary system. Enter an optional comment about this diagnosis here, and press OK to store this information. But wait, if you recall, the patient Joan Cleveland had a relative, Grover Cleveland, who has hyperlipidemia stored as one of his diagnoses. Before the program allows you to declare that there is no family history of hyperlipidemia, it checks the diagnoses of all of the family members of this patient to see if that in fact is true. If not, it warns you so that you cannot add this erroneously. So let's go back and erase hyperlipidemia, but record the fact that there is no family history of hypothyroidism. Press OK, and hypothyroidism is now added to the list of diseases for which Joan has no family history. By the way, if you later record the fact that one of Joan's relatives does have hypothyroidism, the program automatically removes that from the list of diseases for which she has no family history, since that no longer is the case. Click the Clear button if you wish to remove all of the diagnoses from this list. Do this only in the case in which you entered all of them erroneously, such as for the wrong patient. Click the Delete button to remove the highlighted diagnosis from the list, and double-click a diagnosis or click the Edit button in order to edit it. You now see all of the diagnoses entered into the No Family History Of box for this patient. Part 6. Detailed Family History @ Functions. The program comes with @ functions which let you access detailed family history. For example, type @detailed family history to obtain the entire detailed family history. Type @detailed family history no SNOMED to obtain the detailed family history without the SNOMED codes. Type @family history of followed by the name of a diagnosis to see if there is anyone in the family with that particular diagnosis. Part 7. Detailed Family History Parsing. One of the most powerful features in the program is its ability to interpret the free text of family history either in the expander or written in your note in the writer, and convert it into the structured format of the detailed family history. To enable this feature, press System, Parser Options, and check Parse Detailed Family History. Let's see how this works. Suppose you are in the writer for Joan Cleveland and you have written this sentence. Family history. Mother Jackie died at age 72 of lymphoma. When you press F10 to store your note, the parser notices that you have recorded new family history information and asks if you wish to update the expander. Press OK and then overwrite the previous expander for this patient. Now let's see what happened to the detailed family history. Press Write Family History and enter Joan Cleveland. Notice that her mother Jackie has now been added to the list of relatives, that she is no longer alive, and that she had lymphoma, and that she died at age 72. If we click Diagnoses, we can also see that the program has recorded that this was her cause of death. The program can not only parse your notes for detailed family history going forward, it can also parse all of your previously stored family history expanders and convert them to detailed family history. To do this, press the Batch Parse button. Answer yes, and the program parses all of your previous expanders in a matter of seconds. And that's how to use detailed family history in Welford chart notes. For more information, visit us at emirj.com.